Hello again, and it's time for video 2, video 3, but this is 2. It was 1A and 1B last time, of, virtual dissection. So here is our rabbit. It has been sitting in a bag covered in its own skin for a week. Just take that away. And so last time we talked about the external structures of the rabbit and the muscles. And the muscles, you can see they don't look quite as pristine as they did last time. They're pretty good. We shot that video Thursday. It is now the Monday after. And so there's not been that much time for it to start drying out, but it is beginning. You can see it especially right here on this little skinny muscle that you should know what this one is. I'll leave that to you to remember what that is. And but overall not that bad. And we took the photos for your lab exam last week, so they're going to be nice and crisp. So what we are going to do today is we are going to explore in this video the kind of gross structures of the internal organs of the rabbit. So we're going to be opening up the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity, and you have a list of structures that you need to know in the rabbit as well. And we're going to mainly focus, a lot of these structures are going to be mainly in the abdominal cavity. There's going to be, of course, a couple in the thoracic cavity, but most of the stuff about the thoracic cavity we're going to look at in the next video. That's going to be the detailed structures of the heart, and we're going to, actually at the end of this video, we're going to take the heart out of this rabbit, but we're not going to really explore that in depth in this one. We're going to do that next video along with some models which show it actually way better than you can see in this. So, time to get in there. And this has already been started for us by the biological supply company. So we're just going to go down. So I'm cutting through the abdominal muscles. So I'm cutting through, in the midline, we do have the rectus abdominis, which wasn't on your list because it's not always that well preserved, but we have the rectus abdominis, the external obliques, the internal obliques, and the transverse abdominis. I'm going up to the rib cage, and at the rib cage, I'm going to make lateral incisions. There we go. Make some lateral incisions so that I can just take the abdominal muscles and just reflect them out to the side. And then we will pin them in place. Yes, just pin them in. We'll do that side. Here, wait till I wiggle it around a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we'll do the same on the other side. Not the best angle for dissection here so the camera can see what I'm doing. Okay. There we go. So that is what the abdominal muscles were hiding. The visceral organs, the organs of the abdominal cavity. So what are we looking at here? So we have Chris's hands, but underneath that, so things like this, looking at fat, a lot of fat here, but not all of it. So this large organ here, second largest organ in the rabbit, is the liver. Liver is huge. So a lot of people are going to think that's the stomach when they pop it open, and when the whole thing's popped open, might get extra confused, but this is the liver. And here, this is the cranial extent. Reflect the whole panel a little bit. This is the cranial extent of the abdominal cavity. And we can see, we have the diaphragm here spanning it. And we'll see that better in other angles later. So here, then all these really flat things pushed on each other. Get this out. These are your intestines. So we have the small intestine and the large intestine. And the small intestine is named small because of the diameter. It is the majority of the length of the intestine is the small intestine. So it is not the shorter intestine, it is smaller, because here you can see the diameter of each, the intestine is smaller. And that is going to directly come from, here's the stomach. So we have the stomach directly leads, and so all this connective tissue, this is the mesenteries, this is holding everything in place. So we're going to break that with my finger. There we go. Here's our stomach. I'm going to pop a seat. So yeah. So we have our stomach here. And this is a little hard to see from the angle you're at. We'll change the camera angle in a second, but you can see the stomach pretty well over there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have the stomach. It's covered ventrally by, remember, we're looking ventral. This is a ventral view of the rabbit. Stomach is covered ventrally by the liver. Then leading from the stomach, we have the intestine. Here's the small intestine. And it's this tangled blob of intestines that kind of goes all around because we're getting a lot of surface area here for absorption of nutrients. And it will go all around the small intestine until eventually we will hit the large intestine. Here we're going to detangle this a little bit. I'm going to be breaking some of these, but we're going to do that in a bit. We're going to push that off to the side. Then we will eventually exit out. So here we have the descending colon, and we have these little fecal pellets, these little dehydrated fecal pellets. And we'll talk about this more in lecture dealing with the digestive system. So this is just a little overview. But again, this whole labyrinth type mass is all about giving you as much surface area for absorption as possible. And we can see here, this is the third injection of our triple injections. This yellow here. This is stuff that's injected into the hepatic portal system. This is the collection of blood vessels that bring oxygen to your intestines, and they take away carbon dioxide, but they're also taking away nutrients. This is where things that the rabbit ate were passed through. They were broken down into small pieces by the stomach, but the stomach doesn't actually absorb any nutrients. The nutrient absorption happens in the intestines, and there's also some digestion as well. And then once all the food bits are taken out of whatever was ingested, then you have waste, and the waste is what is transported into the large intestine, where the large intestine's job is to get the water out so that you do not have a large amount of water lost in waste products. And if that doesn't work right, you have diarrhea, and diarrhea results in many bad things up to death, especially for small animals and young children, because it's dehydrating you. You're not keeping the amount of water in your system you're supposed to keep in there. Okay, so I'm trying to untangle this because the rabbit has something in its digestive system that you don't have, or you don't have it in this degree. I'm trying to get you a good view. So see here, there we go. This is not broken off. This is a blind pouch that we have in the digestive system. Now what this is this actually, it's a little hard to see because it's all super tangled, but it's coming off this intestinal blob right about here, where we have the interface between where the small intestine transforms into the large intestine. And what this is called, here I'm just actually breaking these mesenteries a bit, this is the cecum. This is this blind pouch that's at the end of the small intestine, right before the large intestine. And this is the site of fermentation. This is where the rabbit will undergo what's called hindgut fermentation, where food will go in here that couldn't be completely digested by the previous organs in this organ system. And there's bacteria in here, and it ferments a lot of the plant material the rabbit eats. And you have the equivalent organ in your body, but it's not used for really a lot of digestion. This is the equivalent of the appendix. The appendix is this little tiny, basically it's about the size of your index finger or maybe even your pinky finger, that's right at the end of your small intestine, that little blind pouch. And in humans, it doesn't do much. Gets inflamed. A lot of you probably have had your appendix out. So it's sometimes considered a vestigial organ. It might have some utility. It might be a good spot for a refuge for your gut flora, your gut bacteria to kind of hide out in there if you do have things exiting through your intestines extremely quickly. But that'll be covered more in the lecture for the digestive system. So again, and here you can see the thicker walls. This is showing the different parts of the large intestine. You know, some things are having a lot more absorption, things coming out than others. So, and for your lab exam, don't worry, I'm not going to show you something that is really hard to tell if you're looking at the small intestine or large intestine just from a picture. You know, here you can see this diameter is much, much greater than this diameter. So, you know, this is the small intestine, this is the large intestine. You know, for the lab exam, that's about, you know, what you're going to have to tell between. And if I give you this nice blind pouch, you're going to need to know what this is and potentially what it's homologous to in people. So remove that aside. So we'll get those kind of pushed out. Now, what else do we have lurking around in here? Other systems. Well, maybe we'll stay on the digestive system a bit. So one thing I've been kind of careful about as I push away, there we go, as I push away all of this mesentery and fatty tissue is I didn't want to really damage it, and I damaged it a little bit, but we see up here, right here where we have the small intestine coming out of the stomach, and there's this tissue here that kind of looks like connective tissue and fatty, and this is glandular tissue. This is the pancreas, and this pancreas is, you know, the pancreas major job is to secrete insulin, which it helps the body absorb sugars. And it's right here at the interface between the stomach and the small intestine, because it's actually food passing through the stomach to the small intestine that triggers it to release insulin. And it's damaged here. It always gets damaged in every single dissection. It's really fragile. This is one reason that people who are in car accidents that get damage to their abdomen, sometimes they develop diabetes afterwards because the pancreas is just like, I'm out. It's a very, very fragile organ. Sometimes people who have surgeries, I knew somebody once that had a liver transplant, and after that she became diabetic because her pancreas was basically so stressed by everything. So even though, you know, it was her old liver was taken out because it wasn't working, new liver put in, you know, the pancreas is over here, not directly, you know, super, I mean, it's right there, but it's not like the gallbladder, which is attached to the liver or anything. But that was enough for the pancreas to be like, you know what? No. And so she was diabetic after that. So it's a very important but very fragile organ. More liver around. The liver's huge. All these lobes of the liver. And other stuff we have here. Here you can see, we're not really out of the circulatory system yet, but this blue vein here, this is the caudal or ventral if you're human, or, you know, posterior, whatever you want to call it. This is the vena cava, which is taking deoxygenated blood back up to the heart. And then we have our descending aorta, which is a little buried in here. This is the red one, which is taking blood down to, oxygenated blood down to the more ventral organs. Other organs we have, right here we can see, okay, you can see this blue again here. This is a vein leading out to this, which I'm going to get out of the body wall. This is the kidney. So the kidneys are embedded in the back wall of the abdominal cavity, really held in there tightly with a lot of connective tissue. And there we go. There is our kidney. And if we look at the top of the kidney, we can see adrenal glands. There's a lot of fat in here. They're really hard to see. Don't worry too much about those. You know, you can't really see them. they don't photograph very well. So that, I can tell you right now, that is not going to be one of the structures you're going to have to identify in the lab exam. You might need to know in the lecture exam where it is associated, because in humans, it's a lot bigger and it's sitting right up there attached to the kidney. So here is kidney, free that one. We of course have another one over here, and this is kind of cool. Our rabbit is a little bit asymmetrical. The right kidney is more cranial than the left kidney. Is that typical for rabbits? No. Is that super abnormal? No. Perfect bilateral symmetry is a bit of a myth. You know, things are mostly symmetrical. So there's our other kidney, and in a second I'll take one of these out. Actually, I'll take this one out because this one's harder to see anyway. So here you can see we have the kidney. We have coming out of it a few structures. We're going to have the renal artery, so this red one here. This is giving blood supply to the kidney. The blue one here is taking blood away from the kidney. And this here is the ureter, which this is the kidney is sending waste products. So kidneys are extremely important. They clean your blood. They remove a bunch of impurities. They take out drugs, and even if you're not doing any of that, they're taking out ammonia, because I guarantee you are making a lot of ammonia waste, because that is a product of cellular respiration. So all the blood has to be funneled through the kidneys multiple times a day, and the ammonia is taken out, and it's a waste product that is excreted in your urine. So we're going to remove the kidney. We're going to leave it connected to the ureter, which if we look at where is this attaching down here, we should be able to find, there it is, the urinary bladder. And well, the bladder, just like it sounds, there we go, we can see it's nice. And notice I'm not using the scalpel for most of this. I'm using my fingers, or I'm using this blunt probe, because these things would be incredibly easy to accidentally cut. Here we can see, the ureter is connecting right there to the urinary bladder here. And this is a special kind of epithelial tissue, comprises the bladder, which is very stretchy. And so the bladder can hold a lot of fluid before it needs to be expressed. So we're going to leave the kidney over there, and we will cut that open. I'm looking for the other major organ system that is sometimes easy to find, sometimes hard to find. Looking for the reproductive system. I can tell you, because it is not super easy to find, this rabbit was not in estrus, it was not in heat, and this rabbit is actually so young. I'm a little wondering if this rabbit was reproductively active. This was a female, but the uterus in female mammals is quite small when it's not in use, or it's not going to be in use. One of the bad things about not having in-person labs is, we only opened one of these rabbits. This is it. It's buried in all this communication. We only opened one of these rabbits, so we only have one example of the reproductive system. And it's right here, and it is incredibly hard to see. Is that Chris? Yeah, right there. Yeah, it's incredibly hard to see. It's just kind of this little bit of red. This, either I've cut one of these fallopian tubes off, or we just didn't have one, which is also pretty common. Either one could be, this is the uterus. It's incredibly hard to see. It's not really well set out. For the lab exam, I might actually get a better photo from somebody else's rabbit from years past. But don't worry, you will have access to that. When the hormones for pregnancy and ovulation are going, and the rabbit can potentially become pregnant, that uterus will be huge. And Chris has seen it in years past. What would you say? It's like 5 times?
Yeah, at least
5 or 10 times. And occasionally we have had a pregnant rabbit, and it goes from something that's like this tiny little thing we can barely see to like this much of the abdomen. So there it is huge. The uterus dramatically expands and contracts, and rabbits more so than other animals even. And that's one reason that rabbits have a really high risk of ovarian cancer, because they have so much cell division occurring every time they go into estrus. So, but again, that's it. It's just extremely, extremely hard to see. So we're just gonna, I think the guide that one of our former TAs, Anna Zapay, prepared a few years back that I put up on Blackboard, I believe that has a better view of a uterus. If not, I will find you a better one online and hopefully find a comparison. So let's see, we're gonna start opening things up down here. So here is the kidney, and I'm going to just do a section through the kidney. Open it up like a little book. And here you can see that even the growth structures, we have this denser, darker part of the kidney, and we have the outer part, the cortex and the medulla. And you know, we haven't had our lecture on the urinary system yet, but you will soon. And you can see, and I don't know how well it's showing up in the camera, but you can see all these little lines, these ridges on here. Each one of these is a nephron. Tubular system, there are oodles and oodles, technical term, of nephrons in there so that this rabbit's kidney can filter all its blood every day, or not anymore, but at one point, all its blood every day. And you know the difference here. You might very well have a question in your lab exam where this is pinned or this is pinned, and it's not asking, is this a kidney? It's asking what part of the kidney that is. You might have, multi-part questions, which is this shows up, this or this is pinned. It says, well, what, first of all, what organ is this? Second of all, what aspect of this organ? And here you can see this is where the blood supply comes in and leaves, and also the ureter. So you should know all of those. Okay, and then we're gonna leave this other kidney in situ, going up there. I guess we'll open the stomach. It's never that exciting to open a rabbit's stomach. These ones, it's gonna be rabbit food, guarantee it. So it's kind of the thick walls of the stomach. They need to be thick enough to, why are the stomach walls so thick? It's to keep the acid that's in your stomach, the hydrochloric acid and other digestive enzymes in the stomach. Again, very boring. It was rabbit pellets. This is more exciting if we open shark stomachs or something like that. In my comparative anatomy class, we have opened the shark stomach before to find a fish that wasn't very digested, so we dissected that fish and found a smaller fish inside its stomach. That happened. That was Nate polling. He's like, I'm just gonna go all the way down. And yeah, so you see, or we've done snakes before. We found little rodent skeletons in their stomachs, but this was eating rabbit pellets, not. But you see, it died very full. So there we go. Didn't go hungry. And so the stomach, this would be roaring and churning and everything. Again, there's no food absorption. Food in your stomach isn't going to make you actually get nutrients. Your stomach just breaks the food down into small particles where then your intestine can absorb it. And your intestine's going to absorb the food, and that's all over here. And then your small intestine, there's just, there are differences throughout the small intestine. We'll cover that a little bit in lecture. You don't need to know that, the gross anatomical differences besides small intestine, large intestine, and where are we? Right here somewhere, there we go. Cecum, homologous to your appendix. Then up here, this is the liver. And here, let's see. I don't know how we're gonna get the gallbladder. Maybe lift up the rabbit's legs. And there, yeah, so the gallbladder is, if you look at the underside of the liver, you can see the gallbladder right there. Is that showing up? Good. So there's the gallbladder. There. And we'll do a little section through the liver. It's not much to see. This is hard too. Feel how hard that is, Chris. Just tap on that. Yeah. Liver is very hard. This is nothing to do with your liver's hard. There we go. So, not very exciting. To cut a little bit through there. I got a bunch of bile. Liver, it's largest organ. It is an accessory organ of digestion. It releases things to aid in digestion. So yeah, that is the abdominal cavity. Leave anything out? Everything. And so we're going to lift it up again because now we're going to show, okay, the boundary between the abdominal cavity and the thoracic cavity is here. This is the diaphragm. And this is a muscle that, so mammals, you know, I talked about this briefly in the intro to animal phys lecture. Mammals have a really good separation between the abdominal cavity and the thoracic cavity, this diaphragm here. Other vertebrates don't necessarily have that. Some have more separation than others, but you know, like your average lizard, they're basically one cavity. But they're two nice separate cavities in us, and this is the diaphragm here, and this is one thing that allows the mammalian type of breathing to occur. The diaphragm, like if you take a deep breath, you're actually controlling your diaphragm going up or down more. We'll talk about that more in respiration, but now we're going to go up into the thoracic cavity now. Here, got the rib cage here, so that's what I'm going to have to cut through. So you want to go, yeah, maybe the scissors work better, yeah. I'll try and cut up from the bottom, and I'm going to go a little bit lateral, because if I go exactly down the midline, I'm going to be hitting the sternum, which is going to be the thickest part of the rib cage. I'm not going to do this in a couple of spurts. So first I'm going to cut through pectoralis, and here I'll just kind of pull this aside, and you'll see how, you know, these muscles are attaching here. There's things you didn't even have to know the difference of. We're pulling the pec major away, and you can see the pec minor under there, and then you can see how the serratus is on there, but don't worry about that. I'm just pulling these away to give myself a better view of the ribs. Oh, there's your intercostal muscles, and there we go. So the ribs, they are bone. Bone's actually pretty weak, and I'm able to just cut through the ribs here, and then I'm able to just break them apart, and there we go, opening up the rib cage. The diaphragm is actually harder to get through than the rib cage to some degree. Okay, don't worry though, this rabbit is beyond feeling any pain from this. We're fine. And I'll just cut this aside there. And I will admit I'm being a little bit more destructive in the dissection than I normally would be, but we've already gotten the photos we need, so I'm just being a little easier. And then we just push those aside and break the ribs a little bit. So now we're on the underside, or the internal surface of the rib cage. And here you can see these glistening things here. These are the ribs themselves. And you can see the blood supply they're getting. You can see all of the soft tissue between them. You know, this is muscles, these the intercostal muscles. And these also help, you know, when your rib cage, you breathe in, rib cage is bigger, you breathe out, rib cage is smaller, those muscles are what is doing it. So what do we have inside here? Speaking of breathing, here are the lungs. These lungs actually are a little not preserved the best, but they're pretty good. So we have the lungs there. We have this large gland here. We have the thymus right here, which is, again, not surprised, is very large. This is a young rabbit. So we got the thymus there. What glands do we have in there? Adrenals. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there is the thyroid gland, unfortunately, is most often damaged because it would be right here. So we'll have talked about the thyroid in lecture, but we're not really going to be able to see it in the rabbit. Other glands, before I forget, we talked about these briefly last week. These are the salivary glands up here. So, salivary glands. So we got our lungs, either side. And then in the middle of the thoracic cavity, we have the heart. And the heart, you know, covered with a bit of fat, covered with a thymus, and it's got this, it's in its own little cavity. Technically, it's covered by membranes separated the pericardium, and so we have these membranes around the heart, and we'll just kind of get some of this out of here to make it a little easier to see. Blech. Again, the blue is veins, so the blue is the deoxygenated blood coming to the heart, mostly. I'm not going to worry about the blood supply to and from the lungs, and again, our heart is just covered in more connective tissue. Inside the body's gross, who would have thought? surprise. And we have the aorta coming out here. So I'm actually just going to, right at the base, there we go. We're going to, there we go, look at that. I'm just gonna prepare that out. Gonna remove the rabbit's heart. Here you can see how big the heart is. And we're going to wrap this video up soon because for the detailed anatomy of the heart, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, and we're going to be looking at a heart model, and we are gonna be looking at the nervous system too. So this is from last year. So this is a rabbit brain to see the brain and the heart, about the same size of the rabbit. This little tiny rabbit brain right there. Obviously that's not this rabbit's brain, and we prepare one of them out every year, but we're not going to do that on camera because it's mostly just very loud and you're watching a circular saw slowly cut through a rabbit skull. But you know, this is a rabbit brain. We're going to go through the details of the nervous system and most of the brain. That's the coolest part of the nervous system. But let's see if there's anything else to really look at here.
Spleen.
The spleen. Oh god. Where even is that? The rabbit spleen is sometimes hard. Yeah, no, rabbits are weird.
Yeah, usually it'd be...
It's smaller in rabbits than it is in primates, so I think a lot of it might be embedded in here. So,
okay.
Yeah, but I think that's why there's no spleen on the list. That's the thing is, like, it does have all the same parts we do, but they're different sizes. Like, I guarantee you, if you ever take, you know, other dissections, you do human A&P, or you do even gross human anatomy, or you dissect a cat or something. Like, you're not gonna, the reproductive system's never gonna be as hard to find as it is in this rabbit. I'm gonna say this is a subadult rabbit, judging by just other aspects of it, how big the thymus is and how really underdeveloped the uterus is. So again, I'm just gonna do a little overview. We'll look at structures here. So we have the endocrine system structures. You have the salivary glands or mandibular glands, depending what book you're looking at, what they're gonna call, but they're right here. These are things that produce saliva, so these are actually, you know, aiding with the digestive system. We couldn't really see the adrenal glands, don't worry about those. I'll show you a picture if anything. The thymus is here. Thyroid gland, that has been completely obliterated. That is no longer here. We have the pancreas right up here. Pancreas. Digestive system proper. Stomach. Small intestine. Large intestine. You know, your cecum, blind pouch. Liver and gallbladders up in there. And yeah, the uterus, the little tiny uterus. Well, don't worry about that one. We'll get you a better picture of that one. Kidney. There's kidney in situ. Here is the kidney. Where's the kidney I took out? I lost my kidney. No, there it is. It's under the rabbit. Kidney. You got your cortex and your medulla inside there. Ureta. And renal is the term you're going to have if anything's associated with the kidney. So you have your renal artery bringing blood in, the renal vein taking blood away. You got your diaphragm, which I've totally cut through here, but this is still obvious, you know, muscle. You can see the striations. I think that's separating the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, where now they are totally intermingling. And up here in the thoracic cavity, we got the lungs, and we'll put the heart back in. You got the heart, you know, leading from the heart, you have the aorta, and then coming into the heart, you're gonna have it's either in humans, in other bipeds, it's the inferior, superior vena cava. In quadrupeds, it's typically called, the cranial and caudal or the anterior, whatever. There's one that comes from this part of the body. There's one that comes from this part of the body. That's all that's really important. And, again, some of the things that would be cool to look at, that we would do if this was, actual lab and not virtual lab, is we would have you prep out a bit of the arteries and veins just leading to the arm or the legs, and you could actually see some nerves in there as well. Nerves aren't going to show up very great on the camera, but you can see the blood supply going out. So that is, I think, video 2. Anybody think of anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
So yeah, there is our rabbit looks a lot worse for wear than it did at the beginning of this video. But again, that's it. So that's your video for this week. There will be a 25-point assignment, and we will have another video that we're actually going to do right now, but you're not going to see for a few days, where we are going to do more details of the heart, and we're going to get into the nervous system. Bye-bye.